Diverse tools for diverse coral reefs and cultures. Coral reefs house about 1/4 of marine biodiversity and provide sustenance for hundreds of millions of people worldwide, all the while protecting vulnerable shorelines from wave action, particularly under rising sea levels. Given their intrinsic value, it is a great tragedy that reefs are being decimated globally by climate change and locally by overfishing, pollution, and uncontrolled development. Despite this bad news, it needs to be remembered that stony corals are remarkably resilient and have persisted globally for over 200 million years. Therefore, efforts aimed at preserving these species need to understand the basis of coral health and resilience and develop tools and solutions that reflect this knowledge. The overarching goal is to bring this knowledge to the stewards of reefs at local sites to advance coral conservation.
Hi, my name is Alexi. I'm from the Republic of Palau in Micronesia. And, being from a small island, I was lucky enough to be able to go out on boats with my grandpa when I was younger. And that was the first time I really saw what a coral reef was and how beautiful it was. And, all of the fish and other animals that it housed. And it wasn't until I got to college and came over to Hawaii that I really realized how much I wanted to study corals. I think it was after seeing my first coral spawning and watching fertilization happen under a microscope, and just thinking that these tiny little beings can someday grow and settle and create whole ecosystems that, islands of people depend on. It just made me want to study them, figure out how to protect them, all with the goal of, preserving these kinds of environments for future generations.
It is important to use modern tools to diagnose coral health and aid coral conservation. In this regard, the Omics Toolkit is probably the most useful and includes transcriptomics, genomics, proteomics, and metabolomics. These are so-called high-throughput methods that provide a lot of biological data about organisms and how they respond to different conditions, such as thermal stress. An example of an omics analysis is shown here. Proteomic data shows that after 2 weeks of thermal stress, Hawaiian corals show a sharp increase in levels of the RAN protein. The control and wild corals do not show this trend. In contrast, the GREB10 protein, shown on the right, has the opposite pattern. It is highly expressed under normal conditions, but then strongly downregulated under thermal stress. Both these protein markers can be used to diagnose coral health in the field by measuring their levels under different conditions or at different times of the year. These cutting-edge omics techniques will be used to develop tools that can be easily used in the field by reef managers to assess coral health on their local reefs.
So 2 of the tools that we used are strip tests and antibody tests. Now, the first test that we're developing is test strips, which are designed to assess human health, for example, through urinalysis. And we've adapted them to diagnose coral health. Now, these AccuTest strips have 10 tests, of which 2 work for corals, ketones and leukocytes. The ketones measure ketone bodies that are a signal of energy deprivation in corals, and a strong test strip reaction means that coral is energy deprived and under stress. And the other strip test reaction that we use to measure coral health are the leukocytes, and these leukocytes measure the immune reaction in the corals, and the stress also shows a high reactivity using these strips. These strips can now be done using a smartphone app that we've developed. It's Test Strip DX and is ready to be used in the field with only a few inexpensive reagents and a special smartphone holder, which makes it really easy to use in remote locations.
Coral research and conservation have expanded greatly on the world stage, with approaches including ecology, climate science, and modern omics methods, as described here. However, much of the work is being done in labs in the US, Europe, and Asia, where no local reefs exist. This has led to a disconnect between mainstream coral science and the caretakers of reefs, who often live in small island nations and do not have access to the resources needed to take part in this scientific revolution or to reap its benefits.
So one thing I think that's really important about the skills that I'm learning out here, along with all of these collaborative projects with researchers from all over around the world, is the ability to bring these skills back to my home island and other islands in Micronesia and build capacity there. Because the kind of work that I'd like to do is one that benefits my own community and communities that depend on these coral reefs. So I think one really important thing about all of these skills is, being able to apply them there and do the kinds of research that the people will benefit from. That they can take this information and be like, okay, I can make these kinds of, I know this about the coral reef right here, I'm gonna make these kinds of laws, or local chiefs can make decisions about their coastal areas that can help with conservation and, preserving the resources better.